We're here for a very special session. This special session is not about a different topic that is unlike social and solidarity economy, but we have called it decent work for sustainable economies and inclusive societies. We cannot conceive a green economy and inclusive spaces if we don't think about decent work first. What does decent work means? It's work done in freedom, equality, and human dignity. If we don't have people at the center of economy, then it's not social economy, it's something else entirely. We know that we're part of the regional conference for regional development of ECLAC. This is also important to us, and I'll explain to you why. But before that, I'd like to give you some background. In Latin America, inequality has been part of our history. During the pandemic, this has not only continued, but worsened. The estimates claim that about 26 million jobs were lost in the region. And the question is, how do we recover? We hear about economic reactivation, and every day we hear this phrase of economic reactivation. But the question is, do we want an economic reactivation going back to the same conditions we had before, precarious jobs with bad working conditions, following the logic of neoliberalism? I think the answer that all of us here would give is no. Yes, we need to reactivate the economy, but based on decent work. That's the way we see it. Social and solidarity economy enables an economic and social transformation where every human being can live to their maximum potential in healthy environments, peaceful environments, and inclusive environments to work in. How can we create this? Often we hear many concepts related to social economy. So I know that you have heard this before. If property is not collective, if it is not owned by those of us who are involved with it, then it's not social economy. It's a different kind of model. It is only when business property is made more democratic will we truly create decent employment. After this introduction, I will give way to the rest of our speakers, but I was thinking about what the director of INAES, Jose Luis, once said to me, that when social and economic changes have happened throughout history, the model that emerges is always a model that already existed before the fall of the one it preceded it. And they're models that are always very well connected in networks. And I think this is a very important next step for social economy, creating those networks, those links to understand what we're doing right, what we're not doing very well, and how we can do better through a cooperative, collective logic, one based on solidarity. A few months ago, together with our friends from ECLAC, we decided to sit down together with all countries in Latin America. I remember the first invitation we sent out, we received confirmation from 4 countries, but in fact, 11 showed up. In the latest one, 6 confirmed and 14 were there. That shows the great interest in all the countries in the region in promoting social and solidarity economy. Today in GSIF 2021, we want to talk about decent work, because without decent work and without collective property, we will not be able to build a better place. And the economic reactivation for our future will be worse than it was before. And what we want is to build a better world. So that's what we're here to do, co-creating paths for a green and inclusive economy. I'd like to welcome all of our participants. I have Dr. Berenice Alcalde here with me. She has been working very hard to make this event possible. So I'd like to start by congratulating her and all the team that has made this event possible. And next, I would like to give the floor to Rodrigo Martinez, who is part of the Social Development Division of ECLAC. Welcome, Rodrigo. Thank you, Humberto. Greetings, Berenice, and all our friends who are now either in presence at the venue that you're in Mexico City, which looks absolutely beautiful, and those who are joining you from afar, who are still facing some restrictions of the pandemic. But I think the positive thing is having this hybrid model where we can all come together, even using platforms. So I'm here with you, even though I'm all the way in the south of the continent, and I'm there with you. We have people here joining us from Korea, and I think that's wonderful. Out of everything that you were saying, Humberto, I would like to echo what you mentioned about ECLAC. ECLAC wanted to be a part of this conversation. We wanted to participate because 2 years ago, we started working together to promote social and solidarity economy in the framework of the Regional Social Development Conference, which was held in Mexico City in late September, early October 2019. One of the key elements that was underscored when we declared the social inclusive development agenda, there was a focus on social and solidarity economy as an instrument for public policy, as a reality in our region that could be leveraged to develop societies. When we talk about development, of course, I mean integral development, sustainable development. So the fact that all the countries voted in favor of that agenda, which had social economy at its core, I think is very significant. And just as has been said in the conference this week, we also talked about the importance of promoting the universalization of social protection so that everyone can have access to comprehensive, universal, sustainable, and resilient social production. I think in the midst of the pandemic, we learned about the importance of resilience, and with all other disasters that we're experiencing in the region, even more so. I'd like to add something else about decent work. We also underscored in the agenda adopted by countries was the importance of promoting universal social protection, as I said, but more specifically, social protection related to work, social assistance, and we mentioned the importance of everyone having access to rights and a minimum standard of welfare. So, for workers, decent work is critical, and social and solidarity economy has an important role to play to promote that, not only in terms of access to goods and services that are part of social services, but creating and developing people in general. And I think that's the importance of our conversation today. When we talk about social and solidarity economy, I think we're talking both about social policy and about economic policy. And therein lies the challenge as well. There are many stakeholders coming to us from different sides. Some people who work more with social policies and others who work more with economic policies. And this is about finding that point of convergence. As Humberto said before, this is a reminder that we have achieved articulation because we have people working in many institutions in many countries that reflect the diversity that has helped us to find synergies. Diversity is positive, but at the same time, we need to find synergies instead of working in and walking in parallel. Today, we face the opportunity of transforming and coming out of the pandemic better than we came into it. That's the challenge, that's the focus, and that's how we can achieve better access to social protection without leaving half of the workers in our region completely unprotected, without access to social protection, without that sense of security, without the opportunity of receiving pensions. So the idea of this economic recovery is to improve, to progress, because that is a characteristic of our region. So, how can we move forward? How can we create the right public policies? Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you and being a part of this dialogue about challenges. That's why I was so excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much for your words, Rodrigo. As you well say, Latin America's DNA has social and solidarity economy as an important component. As Dr. Beatriz Analin said yesterday, we shouldn't be like soap because soap doesn't change a culture. Washing our hands does. So if you have something and you know it's there, but you don't use it, you don't promote it, you don't make it part of your daily life, it really will never live up to its potential. And we're here to do the opposite, to co create and to get things going. And now I'd like to leave you with Juan Manuel Rodriguez Lubiel, Director of the National Social Economy Institute from Mexico, to give us his message. Welcome, Juan Manuel.
Hola, muy buen día. Me da muchísimo gusto saludarles a ustedes, colegas, funcionarios, representantes de las instituciones de distintos países de América Latina y del Caribe, encargadas de la gran misión de fomentar la economía social y solidaria en nuestra región. Me da muchísimo gusto además que podamos encontrarnos en el contexto del Foro Global de la Economía Social, que afortunadamente junto con el Gobierno de la Ciudad de México, el INAES y el comité organizador, el GICEF, hemos podido celebrar.
And the organizing committee, we were able to celebrate despite the pandemic. In fact, I feel very happy that we're here together. I'd like to say thank you to ECLAC. We have been working in the past few months together to create a network of institutions, of officials who seek to strengthen social and solidarity economy. This has become a very important compass for us to achieve welfare for all of our populations. I feel very happy to be holding this session that seeks to go deeper into what decent work means, into sustainable economy and inclusive societies in our region. This is an essential topic, so I don't want to take much time. I just wanted to talk about how important it is to share experiences in our countries because they all seek to create a better future by giving dignity to the most important thing that we have, which is our work, our ability to generate wealth, to create, and that through organization and based on the techniques of social economy, we can be more successful than other models have been. That's why, as I celebrate that together with ECLAC, we are working, and I hope this will be a very fruitful meeting. I hope we're all very generous in sharing our expertise to articulate the work that we're doing much more, and that soon we can see positive results in a region that we can feel proud of. Thank you for being here in the Global Social Economy Forum. I hope you stay safe and healthy, and I hope we meet in person soon, whether in Mexico or in any of your countries. I wish you a very successful meeting. Thank you very much, Juan, for your message, for your participation. We truly value your words, your goodwill, your message of co-creation and establishing networks all across our region. When we talk about decent work, I remember when I first learned about the cooperative model in Mondragon in the Basque region of Spain. And I thought, well, this is more competitive. This could be more successful than traditional businesses simply because property belongs to everyone. It's ours. No one who is asked to democratically decide in their company, in their workplace, if they want equality, justice, dignity or not, will vote for no. So I think that social property businesses should naturally create decent work, and people should be more committed in doing that work because they know its aims are positive. The International Labor Organization has always championed decent work, and that's why Noemi Face is here with us. She was one of the first persons I met when I started working in this area, and we've always had a very open and positive dialogue about where decent work is headed and how social and solidarity economy should be a guiding axis to achieve that. I'd like to give the floor to Noemi Fakes, official of employment and representative from the International Labor Organization. Welcome, Noemi. Thank you. Thank you very much, Humberto. And thank you to ECLAC and INAES for the invitation to participate in this very important global social economy forum. I have some slides. I don't know if I'm allowed to share my screen. Ah, there it is. I think you can see hours, job hours all around the world. 16.2% of all job hours were lost in 2020 in comparison to 2019. It's amazing to see the big challenges we face in terms of recovery as well. This figure, the 16.2% of job hours lost, almost doubles the global average. So this comes to show us how severely the region has been affected and the true crisis that the labor market faces. In 2021, we have seen some signs of economic recovery and creation of new jobs, but it's important to recognize that 70% of the jobs that have been recovered are informal positions, and that has negative consequences in terms of access to rights for workers if they work in informality. And there's a lack of social protection as well for these informal workers. So even though we can identify a nascent recovery, we still have many challenges in terms of accessibility. We still also have a very low employment figure in comparison to the past, rate of economic participation that is lower. It has not recovered yet, which means that people who lost their jobs have not been able to get them back. And this crisis also had an impact on unemployment rate, which went up from 9 to 11%. It's also important to acknowledge that there are many people who are more vulnerable, who have been affected more by the crisis: women, the youth, and unqualified, unskilled workers have been affected disproportionately by the loss of jobs and income. So, this can, of course, deepen inequality in our region. After having shared the outlook that we face, I want to talk more about what decent work is, which is the topic of our panel. You have already heard this explained in the introduction, but decent work, for a job to be considered decent, the first condition is that opportunities for productive employment exist for everyone, for women, for young people, for everyone willing to work. There should be access to the labor market. On the other hand, the concept of decent work must also guarantee that workers' rights are upheld. For instance, the right to do your job freely, not in any sort of forced conditions, and the right to income in order to live with dignity. Decent work also entails social protection. These are mechanisms that can protect us against the risks of daily life. For example, having access to medical insurance, but also a retirement pension scheme and protection in case of accidents in the workplace. The last requirement for decent work, and perhaps the most important one, is social dialogue. Every worker has a right to be represented, and decent work must guarantee their workers' rights, giving them access to collective bargaining as well. This is just a very brief introduction about what decent work is, but now I would like to talk more specifically about social and solidarity economy. As you know, social and solidarity economy are companies, organizations that produce goods, services, and knowledge to cover the basic needs of a community. They are cooperatives, social mutuals, associations, foundations, and all of these organizations and businesses offer opportunities to create decent work and development that is people centered and planet centered as well, because these are organizations that are deeply rooted in their communities and that seek to cover the basic needs of that community. Therefore, they have a high potential for innovation, which I'm sure we will see later on when we get into examples from every country. Regarding jobs and cooperatives, cooperatives employ almost 10% of workers around the world. This is an important figure because even though it might not seem very high, I think that it offers us the opportunity, first of all, to recognize the work that social and solidarity economy has done to promote decent work, and at the same time, the opportunity to support these businesses and organizations so that they can employ more workers, women, young people, and any individual looking for work. Social and solidarity economy, as you can see, has a great potential to create decent work, but it has also had very positive impacts. For instance, in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, it had positive impact in job creation, in decent work creation. And of course, we will hear some examples from the rest of you later on. But I'd like to mention some of the important roles that social and solidarity economy actors have had. First of all, because they are collectives, organized collectives, that puts them in a privileged position to partner with local and national governments to cover the most urgent basic needs of protection teams, of personal protection equipment, and social protection in the case of cooperatives in the healthcare sector. But they also played a very important role in keeping food and essential goods supply services in motion. They knew how to react in terms of their production to support their communities and their countries. In the case of financial cooperatives and ethical banks, they set in motion initiatives to support small and micro businesses who were having difficulties paying back their loans or who were in need of loans. So they reduced interest rates, they offered debt refinancing schemes. So we can see all the services that social and solidarity economy organizations have offered. I'd like to highlight one in particular, which is the potential that social and solidarity economy organizations have to promote green employment. As we know, the economic recovery that we seek must be the same for everyone, must offer equality, but it must also be green because we have an urgency, which is protecting our planet. So I'd like to highlight the job done by recycling cooperatives. We have seen that in many countries such as Brazil, Colombia, India, Sri Lanka. And I know my time is up, but I'm almost wrapping up. What happened is that many garbage collectors, men and women, were not organized. They worked in informal jobs and also unhealthy conditions. But by organizing and creating their cooperatives, they first of all were able to open a dialogue with the local governments so that the local governments provided them with trucks to pick up the garbage, personal protection equipment, and now these workers can have access to social protection mechanisms. So I think they are interesting examples of how organizations working in social and solidarity economy can promote the creation of green jobs. In conclusion, in the next International Labor Conference 2022, we have included a point in the agenda about social and solidarity economy for a future where work is centered on individuals. And that shows us how much the governments are starting to listen to these models, which put people and the planet at the center. Now, to talk about what happens after the pandemic, we believe at the ILO that social and solidarity economy stakeholders are recognized as economic agents that also need to receive relief packages, technical assistance packages that countries have offered, and they need to be seen as strategic partners to create more resilient communities and strengthen local economies in the long term. This is the end of my presentation, but of course I will be staying behind to listen to all the speakers. Thank you. Thank you, Noemi from the International Labor Organization. We really like hearing you present. You're talking about social and solidarity economy, and you use the word business, and it seems people sometimes think that there are no businesses in social and solidarity economy. But it really is an instrument of knowledge. Social economy fits everywhere and is helpful for everyone. Now we will give way to our experience carousel. We have been doing this with many governments in the region for a long time, where we talk specifically about what's being done in every country. Let me start by asking you a guiding question following the same idea that Noemi was talking about, the COVID-19 crisis that hit the region disproportionately, that affected Latin America more severely, leads us to this question. What experiences have you had in your country that can have a positive impact in the region of social economy promoting decent work? I'd like to start by asking Paulo Richard from Chile. First, tell us what organization you're representing and the experience you can share from your country. In 3 minutes, Pablo. Thank you very much, Humberto. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here and greetings to everyone. I'm Pablo Richards and I'm part of the Cooperatives Division in the Ministry of Economy. Based on what we have been doing in this period, which has been very harsh for the whole world, not only Latin America, but based on what we have done, I think the most important thing we did in order to figure out how to react was open a dialogue. It's important to hear everyone's voices, to create public policies or tools that can help social and solidarity economy organizations. As in the division, we work with three types of organizations: cooperatives, trade organizations. But first, I will talk about cooperatives, which are also known as social business models, as many people know them. Based on what Noemi is saying, there's one example that talks about the creation of green jobs. Cooperatives are important to us because they are people-centered. Of course, they need more support, and we need to give them more tools to support them. We have two examples to share. One is a cooperative that works in the metropolitan area where the capital of Chile is, and it allows giving opportunities to foreigners, people who have recently come out of jail, and they offer an opportunity for employment. There are other cooperatives that are important in the world for savings and credit, agricultural and livestock cooperatives that have a lot of recognition in the country, even as brands. What we did working with cooperatives is we have a connection with 1,500 cooperatives. It may not sound like a lot, but it represents almost 10% of our national population if you consider their members. So the work that we are doing with them has been very important. A lot of work was seen lately in tourism cooperatives. Tourism was greatly affected in the pandemic. Chile is a very long but narrow country with many contrasts, and it was greatly affected. Fishing was affected, agriculture was affected, and the government has come up with different support mechanisms like subsidies to work. One is the law for protection of employment, which benefited 900 workers and lasted for a year. Finally, to respect the time constraints, today it offers benefits of subsidy to employment that provides incentives to people so that they can get new job opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pablo. As always, well, Chile has great examples of cooperatives in different economic sectors. And Pablo has just told us about the closeness with which the government and cooperatives work in order to promote social and solidarity economy. Now, Marvin Rodriguez from Costa Rica is going to talk about which experiences with social and solidarity economy have contributed to decent work availability in your country. Go ahead. Go ahead, Marvin. Hello, good morning. I was having some trouble activating my microphone. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. In Costa Rica, the Alvarado Foundation's efforts are led by the presidency. There is a presidential council, which is one level below the ministry level, and they all articulate the efforts for the sector. So that's why it's so important to have this relevance for the administration. And in November 2019, we finished the creation of the first SSE policy in our country, despite the fact that the sector has a great institutional development with almost 100 years of history in our country. there was no policy comprising all of the efforts from the sector. So it is a first act to provide more consistency to our country. Despite having 5 million people as population, we have hundreds of governmental agencies. So just imagine how hard it is to make it all come together and to have coherence between all of the elements. And this is one of the main strategies that we have. One of the main goals, everything that we do should be to achieve SDG number 8, which is to have sustainable economic development, which is environmentally resilient and responsible. So based on that and in alignment with Costa Rica's commitment for the recovery after the pandemic, we have created a coalition with the French government for people and nature. And I would like to talk about our experience with the natural reserves in Costa Rica. A great percentage of the territory is protected. 52% of the territory are forests, but communities are usually located in buffer areas for the protection reserves, and these are poverty and social exclusion areas. So one of the main assets that we have in our country, which affords us a very high reputation worldwide, which allows us also to have a great well-being and in terms of ranking around the world, it is not benefiting the communities who have settled there. So we are sharing management with all of the protection areas. And they participate with guiding services, for example, tour guides, maybe lodging and other services to make these areas more productive, because the natural characteristic, of course, of this territory will not change. It will remain just as it is. But the other project is to focus on public procurement to guarantee that there is a market for these organizations. I think that you have seen that global supply chains are blocked, and it will probably take about 2 to 3 years for them to recalibrate and to return to normal. There is then a great problem when it comes to supply chain, but it is very important to guarantee that there is a market for the cooperatives. Thank you very much. I know I went over my 3 minutes, but I hope that it was clear. Thank you. Don't worry, Marvin. We value your participation, and we know that there are great examples of social economy in Costa Rica. You talked about the link between the government and public procurement, which favors SSE, and it's also protecting one of the greenest place in the world, which is your country. So now we are going to move to Nicaragua, which is pretty close to Costa Rica. And now we have David Lumi. He will tell us about what the initiatives are in his state to promote decent work through SSE. Welcome, David. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Well, thanks. I would like to greet you here from Nicaragua. It's important to remember that the reality here in Nicaragua is characterized by a social situation where most of the big and small producers are extremely important for the economy of our country. They produce 55% of the national wealth. Therefore, producers are at the core of family and social economies, as has been stated also. Another characteristic of Nicaragua is that during the pandemic, contrary to other experiences, our economy was not shut down, and the government opted for a strategy And what our ministry did was to provide follow-up to the small and medium producers who have a great role in the economy. And the health ministry also adopted a community strategy for the territories, which helps the country at this point and throughout this year to economically grow. For example, growth in livestock is between 6 and 7%, according to international organizations and official data sources. This is possible because there is a model for follow-up based on people, families, communities. This model has been built over the last 15 years. In opposition to what we would call indecent politics that have increased vulnerability among society. Therefore, in our ministry, we work together with small and medium producers by deepening training programs, providing microloans, promoting entrepreneurship in the field, having emergency production programs. And it is very important to point out here that technology must be used as well to continue monitoring the work of small and medium producers. It is estimated that about 6,000 families have been aided in their businesses. Their income has grown and they are also a part of this working group, mainly here in the fields of Nicaragua. So this is what we would like to share right now. Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Just like in the last conversation we had with David, he was saying that just as in all of our countries, cultural diversity in each of the territories of the Latin American countries is very diverse, and that's where we need to promote SSE. And he talked about technological inclusion as well to achieve this goal. So thank you very much, David, for your participation. Now let's go to Paraguay with Ms. Cáceres. She is going to talk about access to decent employment in her country. Hello, my name is Maria Raquel. I am from Paraguay. I work at the Ministry for Social Development. In Paraguay, we have extensive experience with migrants from Germany who created associations, cooperatives. They have production and they export their products to many countries around the world. So there is a great experience with high quality production and organization. But the Ministry of Social Development and the government itself has to face the challenge to replicate this good practices for social economy and also to integrate this to the poverty relief programs, which will also improve social development. We are now in a process of analysis about how to work with social economy, and these are families which undergo a situation of poverty. They come from indigenous communities. And there are examples of policies that have been created under this model in previous years. However, they were interrupted and it is now being resumed to see what the experience in the region has been. And with the mentorship with mentorship of our colleagues in Mexico, who are helping us work out an economic reactivation for these families. We have seen that we must continue to work from an organizational perspective and to work very hard on the regulations because for populations in extreme poverty or vulnerability, it is very important to have great awareness about decent employment. For example, we need to have proper indicators, and we can see that this challenge is not unattainable. There are great practices that can be adopted, and if we continue working and providing training to all of these individuals, allowing them to organize, and we make procedures for formalization easier, we could have good results with this segment of the population. And we hope that very soon we will finish our first diagnosis and we will have all of the elements we need to continue designing this national strategy for poverty relief based on the lessons learned from other countries in the region and our colleagues in the field of the social economy. Thank you very much, Maria Raquel. We really like what has happened in Paraguay. And yesterday there was a question about whether there was interest to get to know the social economy. Those of us who don't know it or people who don't know it should have an interest in getting to know more about it. And this is a great chance. They are carrying out this process to really see what the potential is in their country. I believe that it will be a great level of potential and it is a great opportunity to do this. So now we are going to close the round with Richard Delgado from Venezuela. We also have experiences over there. Go ahead, Richard. Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much for providing this wonderful opportunity. I would like to thank you all for this great day. I would like to share that in Venezuela, we have a systematic social protection policy for workers, which is included in the national constitution. And we also must say that besides what has happened in the pandemic, since 2014, we have suffered impact from mechanisms and sanctions that have greatly affected our economy. We have a Bolivarian government that has promoted measures to create decent working conditions with more than 12 systematic policies for protection of wages, benefits, protecting small and medium industries, and sometimes also giving tax breaks. There will be measures to favor companies that can provide more jobs. This is one of the main reasons why there has been a great impact on Venezuela because of the sanctions and because of the pandemic. As for social economy, in Venezuela, the constitution has an article, for example, 308, which talks about social economy. So all of the organic experience in Venezuela, the cooperatives, family production units, saving systems, and everything is protected by the constitution and by a legal framework that safeguards them. We are referring to more than 43,196 socioeconomic organizations, and they are acknowledged and registered in Venezuela. And they are safeguarded by a set of programs and plans which can ensure funding, technical follow-up, social and educational follow-up, technical training, and of course, something that has also been mentioned repetitively is the participation of the public procurement department, not only to improve production capacity, but also to provide thousands of jobs with social economy. These jobs have been provided because of these initiatives. The Venezuela situation is complex in the region, but we would like to express our solidarity to all of our sister nations to continue moving forward and overcoming this hard situation that we are going through. Thank you very much. Thank you, Richard. What Richard just said about Venezuela having, for example, a first approach and registering cooperatives and then providing permanent follow-up to them is something that really that really gives a lot of usefulness to the project. So we will end our session, our round of experiences. We would like to thank all of the countries that were here and that could not be here, such as Argentina and Cuba, Colombia, but they are helping us build this alliance of Latin American states to build policies to help SSE contribute to a green and more inclusive economy. Thank you for your participation. And before closing this discussion and co-creation process where we like to listen to each other to see how we can improve things in our country, I would like to give the floor to Pablo Llanes, who is the coordinator of research of the subnational headquarters of the ICLAC in Mexico. And we know that he's a firm believer and promoter of social and solidarity economy. Thank you very much for being here, Pablo. You can start your message now. Well, thank you, Humberto, and I would like to greet Berenice as well, with whom we have also had the opportunity of working. We have worked with INAIS as well to create a very productive roadmap. And I would also like to congratulate you on the results of GSEF, because it is an example of collective effort from many countries and continents, and it also has the support of the Mexico City government. Well, the experiences that we have heard and other experiences that we know about clearly show that the big SSE sector is larger, more complex, and more diverse than what is generally believed. So it would seem as if it were a small phenomenon, but it is not. It is not a sector that's only focused on the poorest in the population. On the contrary, it is very diverse. It is not only linked to primary and agricultural activities, but there are also interventions from different sectors. Many of the experiences here also talked about the social banking systems, cooperatives for savings and loans. So this is extremely relevant to this discussion. And I would like us to take a look into the future and think about the role of SSE for the development of a new style, so to continue with a new type of development. Because if we desire all of this to be a transformation, and if we don't wish to go back to the pre-pandemic situation and the pandemic situation, and we need development mechanisms, well, in this sense, social and solidarity economy will have a very prominent role. If we agree with the fact that this new style of development must comply with two essential characteristics, which are equality and sustainability, this will be possible. The social sector of the economy can have great potential and can do great things if these two requirements are fulfilled. It is not only about promoting the sector and about allowing it to reach its full potential, which is absolutely necessary, but it is important to see what the whole economy and the whole of society can learn from this sector, because many of the principles of this sector can also be applied to others. How can it help redefine the debate on development perspectives under new terms? And I would like to point out a few elements that are related to this. It is a sector where all of the production processes, companies, and organizations are they stand out from other sectors of the economy, but its internal inequality levels are much lower in comparison to others. One of the findings for the inequality analysis is that when it comes to wages in the production sector, the gap, the wage gap has become bigger in the conventional economy. However, for social and solidarity economy, the internal wage gap is much smaller, which means that the market distribution is much fairer and more equitable. And now we have very interesting debates about how the so-called redistributive economies can contribute to having more equal societies. So I think that this is the first advantage, the first contribution. It's a type of production system that has much smaller and a much lower inequality in comparison to the rest of the sectors of the economy, because in other sectors, the inequality is bigger. Of course, this should be a rule for the economy as a whole, and it would not only have to be a characteristic of SSE. And then we have sustainability. Many of the presentations from the panelists of different countries emphasized that it is necessary to follow the path that has been created by many SSE entities to promote sustainable practices. It is not a secret that agroecology has advanced quite a lot. We talked about the recycling experience, for example, and it's a circular economy, recycling new materials, recycling waste, having environmentally friendly initiatives, harnessing agroecological practices for the coffee value chain, for example, which is extremely important for cooperative movements. So there are very interesting pioneering initiatives in the circular economy, and there are also nature-based solutions and that are supported by social and solidarity economy. Therefore, what I would like to remind every participant is that it is not only about the importance, relevance, weight, and density of the social economy. It's not about its influence. Right now, it is not even close to what it could be. It has great potential, enormous potential, and it is also important to acknowledge that everything that has been achieved in the development of the social and solidarity economy sector, in much cases, has been under not so great conditions and without the support of public policies and the government. In many countries, there have also been interventions from the government in order to favor the promotion of SSE. There is still a lot to be done. There is great potential. And what we have seen so far is just an example of a future capacity, then a display of full performance. The social and solidarity sector could also be a very powerful tool to reduce the economic participation gap between men and women. It is a sector in which women participation is relevant. However, the growth potential and development is remarkable. Therefore, if we think about this new style of development, increasing equality, sustainability, and more gender equality, the social side of the economy already has shown results, but it still has even more potential to develop. In this case, the integration of this sector in the macroeconomic policy design for employment policy design or social protection instruments that ensure that the entire sector enjoys working and social rights that should be afforded to them. And the design for industrial policies needs to include this permanently. SSE should be permanently and actively included in all of the discussions. If we agree, and I think that we do, that it is necessary to make progress in this transformational process and to create a new style of development, the SSE sector will provide qualitative contributions, which will prove to be very relevant, and it will develop much more than it has so far. In Mexico, we also have a satellite account for the social economy. We are working with INAES in their process for updating, and I'm really sure that if in 10 years SSC enjoys the support, promotion, and backup that it needs, it will be possible to see that these satellite accounts will become much more relevant, much more influential, and will have much more weight in the sector. But it is very important to have equality, collaboration, cooperation, sustainability, and gender equality. They are the main elements for the contribution. So I believe that that is extremely important. Thank you very much, Pablo, for your message, and thank you for summing up all of the elements that were presented in this round. And to close, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Berenice Alcalde, who is going to give the most important conclusions that we have heard so far in this roundtable. Thank you so much, Humberto. We are going to reflect upon everything that was said. We are going to have a very quick round to conclude this session. We will talk about three very concrete ideas about what should be done about SSE, and mainly to reduce inequality and improve working conditions. I don't know if you've heard about the Gini coefficient. This is basically something that the World Bank has developed. And a few years ago, one of the most unequal countries, some of the most unequal countries in the world were presented. Out of the 10 bottom countries, how many do you think were in the Latin American region? You were saying someone all 2, 5, 8. It was 8 out of 10. So this is the most unequal region in the world. And so I would like to ask this question once again very quickly. What are very concrete actions or ideas about how to reduce inequality and how to provide decent work in the process? Let's see if we can do this very quickly. Let's begin with Pablo. Go ahead, please. Okay, thank you very much. Well, this is no easy task. It's very difficult to sum this up in 3 points, but in this sense, I think that we must have collaborative work for the South Cone. And we also need to have a common direction to follow. And after a few years, I've also come to the conclusion that training is absolutely necessary to provide the necessary tools for people to find the most appropriate options with the support of the government. Thank you. Thank you, Pablo. Now, Costa Rica, Marvin, three ideas of concrete actions to promote equality and create decent employment. Thank you. Well, I think the first one would be in the sector itself, and we would have to implement equal wage policies. So there should not be a difference, such a great wage difference within cooperatives. So nobody's salary should be 10 times higher than another person's salary. Some people are earning more than $25,000. And we need more decentralization and more allocation of resources for the cooperative sector. The risk levels are most acceptable, but if you look at the agricultural cooperatives and you talked about the coffee value chain, a lot of them are also under crisis at this point. And another measure that could be taken, we must see if the distribution of resources is correct. We also have a system which Uruguay also has in the continent. So 5% of the state banks distribute this over the territory, and all of the sectors or areas that are more distant will have more difficulties to have access to it. Okay, now we are going to give the floor to David in Nicaragua. Go ahead. 1 minute. Okay, Nicaragua's experience, I think it is important to highlight having comprehensive policies. So we cannot only have productive follow-up to social economies, we must continue in the commercial side as well. And there should also be a promotion of associations within the sector. This needs to be very well articulated because otherwise the social economy will be intermittent and there will be interruptions in the development process. And for the ethnic communities, it is also important to have more comprehensive territorial policies for social economies because the vision that ethnic groups have is comprehensive. So we must adapt to this and we must learn from the potential. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, David. Now we will go to Venezuela with Richard Delgado. Go ahead, please. Okay, we have 3 concrete proposals. First of all, we need a system that allows us to organize, to get to know each other, to know who we are and what we need when it comes to the organization of the social economy. On the other hand, I think that technical training and professional training is very important. We must develop policies that are consistent with the local conditions for the social economy. And finally, it would also be important to have comprehensive policies that are more coherent and relevant and that will help fulfill the potential of SSE. Okay, thank you very much, Richard. This would be our conclusion. It is important to remember the importance of having South-South cooperation and creating partnerships among Latin American countries because all of them referred to public policies. We need more equitable public policies. It was also mentioned that there is a wage gap, and so it's necessary that public policies create social tools that promote collaboration, and having discussion as well about the importance of creating comprehensive public policies and the forging partnerships among sectors in order to promote cooperation. I would also like to say that during the pandemic, women and children, youth are the first ones to suffer the consequences of the crisis, and they are the last ones to be able to recover from it. So it is important to promote policies, and SSE is a great option to give training to cooperatives, for example, who are here with us today, and many others. So creating work mechanisms, as more than 70% of these jobs are informal. So all of the government sectors, private companies and associations should work to make sure that the population, but mainly young people and women who are also still suffering the consequences of the crisis, can have the benefits of actions that are very concrete. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to Raul from ECLAC. He will tell us about what will happen at the end of the month and how we should proceed in the next steps of this Latin American network for SSE companies and governments. Thank you very much, Bere. Hello, everyone. Well, to conclude, I would just like to invite you all to the fourth region of the regional conference about social development in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is being organized by ECLAC, the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and the United Nations Agency for Development. This will happen between October 26th to 28th. And so we will have the participation of the authorities of the region, and will present a document on inequality about implementation alternatives, about some lines of action for inclusive social development, which has been approved in 2019 in Mexico City. And I would specifically like to invite you to the parallel events that will take place during the regional conference. And there will be a session on social economy organized by our colleagues from INAIS Mexico. This will be the fifth event that we jointly organize, and it also shows the growing interest among public authorities on social and solidarity economy. I would just like to wrap up by inviting you all, and please take advantage of this great effort, the Global Forum for Social Economy and all of the events that are taking place, in order to learn from experiences that help to strengthen SSE in the region. Thank you. Thank you very much, Raul. We will conclude with this session, and this is not the end. We will continue moving forward in the creation of partnerships and alliances in Latin America, and we are all convinced that we are going towards a better future. Thank you. Have a great afternoon, and farewell to Dr. Berenice Alcalde. Yes, we cannot be left behind, and this level of inequality is very painful. It is extremely regrettable, but we are now able to do something to change it and have a better life. Now let's take...
Lugar lleno de historia, de grandeza, nuestra casa, donde hace más de 7 siglos inició todo, nuestra gran Tenochtitlan. Este es nuestro sitio, donde honramos nuestro pasado, vivimos el presente y soñamos el futuro. Lugar donde habitan guerreros y guerreras que históricamente han luchado batallas juntos, solidariamente. Ayer, la historia presentó un reto sin precedentes que marcó nuestro camino, pero hoy nuevamente nos unimos para levantarnos como lo hemos hecho siempre. Porque la Ciudad de México está más viva que nunca y su corazón late intensamente con toda su magia y esplendor. Una ciudad lista para recibir a nuestra gente y a nuestros invitados con toda seguridad, para crear en ellos experiencias y sensaciones únicas que nunca olvidarán. La Ciudad de México es un lugar consentido y que consiente a quien la visita, porque puedes respirar una ciudad que tiene nuevos pulmones, con parques y áreas verdes recuperadas que hoy son admirados en el mundo, con espacios sorprendentes que han cobrado una nueva vida. Ciudad de México, un lugar donde se observa y se aprecia el arte, la cultura, cuna de tradiciones, lugar para mirar en la historia y para observar la modernidad y visionar el futuro. Estamos aquí donde el gusto por nuestra gastronomía no tiene límites, lugar de sabores, texturas, aromas y colores. Una ciudad hospitalaria, con tacto para atender a nuestros invitados como se merecen, con el mejor servicio, amabilidad y calidez.
Una ciudad segura que gracias a un eficiente programa de vacunación prioriza la salud y la seguridad de todos.
Estamos aquí donde el latir se escucha a través de los sonidos, el de nuestros habitantes, el de las calles, los parques y rincones, los espacios que marcan el pulso de una ciudad vibrante. Ciudad de México, una ciudad donde todo hace sentido, que se mueve, que no se detiene, movilidad de clase mundial que llega lejos y alcanza un nuevo destino. Sean bienvenidos a la ciudad que lo tiene todo y que hoy se reactiva con el impulso de su gente. Esta es la capital cultural de América, la capital de los derechos y la innovación, una ciudad que vibra, late y se siente, una ciudad segura.
Visita la Ciudad de México.
Gobierno de la Ciudad de México.